On their new album, Many White Horses, Firestations take listeners on a journey. Last year, two of the London band's 5 members, singer and songwriter Mike Cranny and multi-instrumentalist Laura Copsey, embarked on a sailing expedition around the Inner Hebrides of Scotland. The yacht, and the islands to which they journeyed, were the setting for a week-long art residency together with 7 fellow creative explorers. As you're about to hear, Mike felt so inspired by the trip that he began writing and recording an album. Completed rapidly on his return to London, its 9 gently hypnotic songs, threaded with atmospheric found sound samples, are a quiet revelation. I began by asking Mike and Laura how they came to be aboard the boat. Laura's experience in sailing is lifelong, whereas for Mike it was all a little newer.
My dad's a bit of a pirate, so we just went up and down the river a lot as kids. And so I grew up on the water but never actually properly learnt to sail. I'm pretty clumsy. I sit down quite a lot and strap myself on when we're at sea because I'm not the most coordinated, but there's something about the horizon and being on the water that's really good brain space, and find it really creative to be there. So for the last 5 years, I think now, maybe 6 even, I've had the opportunity to run or collaborate on a sort of little residency at sea for artists with an organisation called Sail Britain. And we sail around the small isles, which is obviously, we sometimes pop to visit Johnny, but often when we're up there, he's at Green Man. But it's around 𝘔𝘢𝘯𝘺 𝘞𝘩. And last year, for the first time, Mike decided to come. But last year, the weather gave us a proper battering. It was really hardcore. Yeah, you got the full experience, Mike, I think, of being at sea in a major storm.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I have never been on a sailing boat before. I've been on a cross-channel ferry and various other ferries in my time. But yeah, this is a completely different experience in the sense that it's a very small boat and it's a bit of a shock to the system, especially when the seas are quite rough, which they were quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, so it was a art residency where we were exploring different things and everyone came with their own sort of way of working, and it was just an experiment really in how you might respond to place and the difference between land and water and how the horizon's ever present. And it was really nice to have Mike on board. You were so productive. You did such a lot with a very extremely broken guitar. There was a guitar on the boat that was completely knackered. The sea had destroyed the wood, I think, to some extent, but you managed to make it work, I'd say. It was really limited in an interesting way.
It's quite a claustrophobic space. It's a relatively small sailing yacht with 9 other people, and I'm a kind of person, I quite like my own space. I'm a massive introvert, so I've always wondered how I would respond to that experience. I think I was basically inspired to try something new and give myself a bit of a challenge. Losing my dad last February was an impetus generally in my life just to basically say, fuck it, I'm gonna just try doing more adventurous things, because it gives you that kind of feeling of you haven't got forever, you gotta just do stuff when you can. I think it was 9 of us, 7 artists and 2 crew. We're all technically termed crew because we do help out where we can, although my sailing abilities, as you may have already gathered, are pretty limited. So someone asks me to tie a knot, the likelihood is the boat's going to be floating away from the mooring. It's got a sail. It's also got a...
Wow, really?
It's got a sail. It's got more than one sail, actually. It's got a lot of ropes. It's got a motor as well.
Cheating.
Yeah, for cheating, but great for creating ambient drones musically. If you haven't got your sea legs, like I haven't, you're just like almost falling over the entire time and trying not to be sick the rest of the time.
What a great holiday.
But I'm painting it in a fairly like negative light there. But yeah, so it's extremely unique living space to be on for a full week.
We started off in Malig. It sometimes varies. Sometimes we go from Oban, but we went over to the Isle of Rum and we stayed there for a couple of days because the weather was really quite bad. So we walked across the island and went to 𝘔𝘠𝘯𝘺 Bay and hung out in the community hall where Mike encountered quite a lot of other battered instruments, like a drum kit that was a bit broken and a really beautifully out of tune piano and a synth from probably the 80s.
Mike seems to have a talent for discovering broken down old instruments. Are they like attracted to you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, as soon as I saw that piano, I was like, oh yeah, that. And when I played it as well, it was so beautifully out of tune that you're like instantly making music concrete or something like that. It almost sounds intentional. I like the accidental element of that in shoddy old equipment, which was what really drew me to the boat guitar. After the initial frustration of it was like, because I was thinking I'll be able to do some sort of songwritery, songcrafty sort of stuff, getting a bit ambitious maybe, but that guitar brought me back down to earth with its limitations in that it was really difficult to keep it in any kind of tune. So there was only one way to play it, which was to put it in an open tuning with a capo quite high up the fret, and then it would basically stay in tune enough, but you could only really play 1 or 2, 3 chords on it maybe. So those kinds of things, like with the synth in the village hall as well, just switched it on, chose a random setting, pressed play, recorded it for like 30 seconds and moved on. It's quite exciting when you're used to like sitting in front of a laptop or whatever. You've got Ableton, Logic, whatever you've got, all the MIDI instruments in the world. But that can almost feel more constraining, I think, sometimes.
Can I kind of intuit from the fact that there was a lot of spontaneous use of found instruments and things, that the plan had not necessarily been to write a record on this trip? That kind of happened spontaneously.
That is pretty much true, yeah. I was told that the guitar was in fairly good condition. There was a lot of, do you know who I am? I'm Mike from Firestations. I was promised a brilliant guitar. No, I didn't know exactly what I was going to find, and I didn't have a plan. I thought I might write some songs, or I thought I might write some lyrics. I thought I'd just see what happened. It just turned out that that particular guitar was sent by the gods or something to challenge me. And it has to be said that the situation on the boat was quite, as we said already, like quite claustrophobic. So I think there was a little bit of coping mechanism involved there as well, which is what I tend to do anyway with playing the guitar. If I'm a little bit nervous, I'm just going to jangle away on the guitar for a bit. So I think that kind of led into just naturally coming up with a few ideas for songs. I'd have this thing where I'd want to finish stuff. I can't move on until I feel like something's finished, and that's just in my head. It doesn't necessarily mean it would turn into an album or anything concrete, but in this case, somehow I was like, oh, I've got 9 tracks. That sounds like an album. That's when I started thinking of it as more of a kind of definite thing.
Can you describe to us some of the different ways in which we as listeners are able to sort of share in the sights, the sounds, the feelings of this adventure through the album? How is it present in Many White Horses?
So there's a lot of found sounds and a lot of atmospheric field recordings. that feature as part of the tracks. For example, on the first track of the record, there is a accordion drone, which is there throughout, and that was recorded on 𝘔𝘢𝘯𝘺. There's pretty much all the percussive sounds that you hear on the record are taken from a water butt that was out the back of the place we were staying on 𝘔𝘢𝘯𝘺, just pounding that. So the bass drum sounds that you hear are this massive water butt, and lots of kind of percussion that I recorded in the music room there as well, in this old house, 𝘔𝘢𝘯𝘺 house. There's a lot of sounds from the boat as well throughout. People talking in the background. There's the water moving past the boat. There's the engine. There's the wind. There's the rain. So there's all the kind of environmental sounds as well. And there's also like actual, quite a lot of the guitar is that guitar that I was playing on the boat. Sometimes I've added stuff to that, but it's in the cabin being recorded with the creaks of the wood and everything like that. So I feel like it does take you to that place as the listener.
Tugged from anywhere to anywhere, for in the deep sea there is no compass, but nearer and further, higher and lower.
I was interested in how like some of the sort of things that we did, like art-wise, like setting an intention, using some of these like cards that I've got. Like one of them was, how can you collaborate with this patch of earth? A bit maybe cheesy, but like those sorts of things filtered into your lyrics. And there was also like, I always laminate something and read it in the sea. Like it's like a reading group in the sea. And this year I was like experimenting with trying to draw underwater and stuff. And one of the readings that we did was, sounds mad actually when you say it out loud, but like one of the readings was like 𝘔𝘢𝘠𝘚 𝘔𝘠 𝘏𝑰 of Heaven. And it's like the first page of the book is all about the sea and about jellyfish. And I'd laminated that and we read it in the sea, and that kind of featured in one of the songs.
Radiance and instability, where there is no support for life. And now,
I guess the key thing is the title track as well, Many White Horses, which was the first thing that was written. We had been looking at the Beaufort scale, which is like the scale of wind and sea state. And there's some really poetic language in that, which I recommend people having a look at, because it's a great way of where kind of science meets art almost. I think it was Victorian period when it was codified by this man, surname Beaufort, not sure of first name. Let's call him Mr. Beaufort. He made a great descriptions of how the sea looked, and one of them is when it's many white horses, like the sea is foaming a bit. That's like a moderate level of wind and
the
waves.
waves look like horses jumping around.
The album was substantially recorded in when you got back in London. And to my understanding, that sort of lurching return to dry land and the big city and trying to process and not lose the feeling of that trip is something that equally sort of represented in the album.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the first track is pretty much all about that, all the way back down here. The chorus is holding on to the intention. Those are the words there. And yeah, I think it can be quite difficult to put yourself in the headspace of something when you're not actually in it anymore. I think that's the beauty of good art and music, is that the people making it can transport someone somewhere else. And so I almost had to like try and transport myself somewhere else when I was just back at work in London, like on the tube, and there's so many people everywhere. Like when you've been in the wilderness, it's a real sort of shock. But so you're trying to distill that feeling that you had that's still there, like an echo in your head somewhere, in your being somewhere, and get it into the music before you get fully reabsorbed into kind of city existence. That's why I had to make it so quickly, I think. It only took it was done within a few weeks of coming back, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. There was a certain kind of frantic approach to it, because I think I realised if I didn't do it that quickly, then I would lose that feeling somehow, or not be able to really communicate that feeling so well. So yeah, it had to happen very fast.
With the boat, I think there's something weird about time. Like, it slows time down, and it feels like you've been away for like weeks in a really weird way, because there's so much that happens in a day, from like when you wake up to when you go back to sleep. Stretches out time, and it's really memorable. Like, it's the sort of thing that you don't forget about, really. But it's hard to cling on to those feelings when life takes over. But it's like such a special experience to have. I feel very lucky to have had that opportunity. I got obsessed with dry stone walls.
Yeah.
Classic.
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah, we tried to build one. It's bloody hard. But it's on the back cover of the record if anyone's into dry stone walls, email me. I'm a nerd. But yeah.
There's plenty of videos on YouTube of brilliant old men restoring old dry stone walls. It's pretty
so hard.
Meditative stuff.
But it is meditative. It's like Jenga.
Okay.
How else can you respond to that?
I don't really have any follow-up questions on dry stone walling prepared.
What, really?
Yeah, but we'll do that next pod. We'll do a whole podcast. Let's do the
Oh god, that would be so popular.
a dry stone walling podcast.
That'd be great.
And what is over the horizon next for Firestations then?
We've got some gigs for this record. That's the immediate thing we're concentrating on at the moment, getting the live stuff together.
We've been working with 𝘔𝘠𝘧𝘏, and who was a crew person who came on the boat last year. She's an illustrator animator, and Simon Hamlin, and they're making lots of really lovely animated weathery elements that we'll use for the live projections when we do our gig. So it's actually been quite nice on the art side, because I did the album artwork, but Lauren's got some horses on the label, and Emily Evans did the horse on the cover, and there's a ton of horses actually. A bit literal, but anyway, there's, if you buy the record, you'll know what we mean.
Mike, will you be getting on a sailing boat again, I wonder?
Good question. I'm not going to be getting on the boat this year for the expedition, although Laura is running another week again. Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. It was something pretty unique and uniquely challenging as well. I'll say yes, I'll do it again, but it takes a while to acclimatise being back on land. So I think I'm still getting my land legs back maybe at this point. I'd like to do a different mode of transport.
Yeah, your camper van.
Do people need an experiential album of camper van life? Maybe not.
Not quite as sexy as a sailing boat.
No, not quite. Cooking beans on the camping stove. Yeah, I could probably write a song about that, but I won't. I definitely won't.